Hey, guys. So I, 33M, have been married to my wife, whom we'll call Mindy, 30F, for about 3 years. She and I met through a couple of friends, several years ago, and after dating for almost 4 years, we decided to get married. Mindy and I have a lot in common, including the fact that we were both bankers. But after we got married, she quit her job to join her friend who was starting a business. She had saved enough, and I had told her that I was going to support her, which I did. She had always wanted a business of her own since her parents had also been entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, they have not been very successful. So they have a small-scale makeup and beauty business which is pretty much limited to the locals. But Mindy wanted to do something bigger and I was supportive of her. I, myself, come from a business background as well, but unfortunately, I have never really taken an interest. My parents are really wealthy, and I grew up very rich. My grandfather started a bakery business a long time ago, and then my dad took over when he was old enough, and that's when the company really started flourishing. We're doing pretty well, but the company is going to go to my brother and not me. I don't mind it, I don't want it anyway. I'm happy with the job that I have and I want to stick to it. Unfortunately, my parents passed away a couple of months ago. My dad had been suffering from a lot of heart problems for a really long time, and it was a cardiac arrest that finally got him. My mother had just passed away during the pandemic, and it was just a generally really difficult time for our family. Mindy had been great throughout, and I was really happy that I had somebody to count in this difficult time. My brother and I were the ones who had to sort out his affairs after he passed away because it was really sudden and we hadn't seen it coming. My brother is a couple of years older than I am, and while we were speaking to our parents' lawyer, he told us that now, he was finally allowed to reveal what our parents had left to us. Apparently, they had a clause that as long as one parent was surviving, we would not be inheriting anything. But now that both of them were gone, it was finally time to read the wills. I think it was a pretty interesting approach, but Mindy didn't really care for it and said that it was diabolical. Either way, the probate process of my father's will was completed only recently, and only then did we find out the contents of the will. It was no big surprise that my parents had been so dramatic about this whole thing because they always had been a fan of the theatrics, so this was quite expected. Along with the clause that said that only after both of them had passed away would the wills be read, there was another clause that stated that it could only be done after the probate period was over and both my brother and I had to be present in the same room for it. I thought it was fun because it really made me feel like I was in a movie or something, but as usual, Mindy didn't like it one bit. I wasn't surprised that she wasn't enjoying this process because she had never really liked my parents because she said that they made her nervous and she felt like they were always looking down on her. I didn't think that was the case at all, and I had tried to convince her of it several times, but she never bought it. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, my brother and I finally met for the reading of the wills and we were told that all the property would be divided equally between us. And while my brother would be inheriting the business, which was natural because he had been handling it while my father was sick, I would be inheriting their house. And by their house, I mean the sprawling estate that my parents used to live in. My childhood home was worth quite a lot and I was really happy that they had left it to me. Other than that, all the money that they had left would also be split equally between us, and whatever other properties that they had which weren't listed in the paperwork specifically would be sold and the money would be given to charity. My brother and I were completely fine with it because I think they had been more than fair and equal, but Mindy had a problem with it because she felt like the business should also have been left to me and we could run it together as partners. I didn't think that was going to work because, for starters, I didn't have any interest in running my parents' bakery business. As I said, I was quite content with the job that I had. It paid well and I was in a pretty high position, so I had nothing to worry about. Besides, my brother had actually put in the work and effort into understanding how the company works and knew everything about the business. I don't think it would have been fair for my parents to leave it to both of us and let us run it as partners. He deserved to be the sole owner because he had worked for it. And I knew that he could reach even greater heights than my father had because he had amazing business acumen, and I was proud of my brother. He and I have a really great relationship as well, so I was sure that if I was ever in any trouble, he would bail me out, no questions asked. But for some reason, Mindy didn't really like whatever was going on. However, she was pacified by the fact that I had inherited the mansion. It was worth quite a lot, not to mention the fact that it was quite old since my great-grandfather, my mother's dad, had built it a really long time ago. My mother's family was pretty rich too, since I think they came from aristocracy or something. I'm not really sure about the history, but I do know that they were pretty rich. It also helped that my mother's dad was one of the best lawyers of his time. So that was generational wealth, and my mother's family members had all maintained it through their work. It's important that I mention how hard my parents had worked, in spite of their generational wealth, which I admit, did give them an advantage over others, but they never looked down on anybody who was not as financially well off as them, and they raised me to be the same way. But anyhow, when Mindy found out that I was going to inherit their estate, she instantly started insisting that we sell that place for a great price, and then we go on a vacation with the money. It was kind of silly because we could afford to go on vacation anyway, but she didn't want a normal vacation. Like other people, she wanted us to both quit our jobs and just take off for several months. She said that she wanted to do a world tour, which wouldn't be possible if we were chained to our desks. But if we sold the property that my parents had left to me, we would be easily able to afford traveling for months and then we could just come back and find new jobs. I thought that it was a crazy plan. And more than it being downright ridiculous, I didn't even want to quit my job. I loved the place where I worked, and I really liked the people that I worked with. But I can't say the same for Mindy. She was the kind of person who hated having to work. I couldn't even blame her because even though she had joined her friend in the business that they had set up together, it wasn't really doing as well as they had expected. My wife was the one who handled the finances for the business and she would constantly be complaining about how long it was taking them to crack the code on how to actually scale up and become really profitable. They were doing okay, but it was just not good enough for her because she was getting paid less than she used to at the bank. And I was getting really frustrated with her. I could understand that. I really respected her for putting so much work into building something of her own, but at the same time, I could only sympathize with her. I didn't want to quit my job because I enjoyed my work and I didn't think it was fair for her to demand that I do so just so she could have what she wanted. So I put my foot down, and I told her that I would not be selling the property for any cost. More than not wanting to take a 6-month-long vacation, I just didn't want to sell my childhood home. It held a lot of sentimental value to me and I really didn't think it was fair to ask me to sell something that meant so much to me so we could go on a vacation. When I declined, Mindy got really mad at me and she called me a bunch of things. She said that I was selfish, and she shouldn't have expected any better. Because after all, I was my parents' kid and I was doing the same thing to her that they had done all their lives, looking down upon her. She claimed that she wasn't even asking for much, but I thought it was a lot. I also didn't like the fact that she was calling me selfish just because I wanted to continue working at the job that I had and didn't want to sell my home. She was being ridiculous and I told her so she completely lost her mind that day and we had the worst argument of our relationship. We had never ever felt the way that we did that day and even I had never lost my temper at her like that. We said a lot of horrible mean things to each other and were trying to make each other feel bad. So after a while, she just packed up her things and left the house to live with her parents. She told me that she wouldn't be coming back unless and until I changed my mind about the vacation. Apparently, this was no longer about the vacation, this was about the principle. She said that I was never willing to make sacrifices for her or prioritize our marriage and she was getting sick of it. I didn't even know what she was talking about at that point, because that seemed like a lot of BS that she was coming up with on the spot to make me feel bad and guilt trip me into agreeing with her. Even when I did ask, for an example, of when exactly I had put her down, she couldn't come up with anything. It was just a stupid argument fueled by nothing but rage. And I really do regret it because I love my wife and I would want her to come back. But the things that she said were really cruel and unnecessary. She made me feel like I was the villain for simply not wanting to quit my job just because she hated her own. She also said a lot of things about my parents, which I thought was a low blow. They were gone now, and they would not be able to defend themselves. And call me sensitive, but I think it's in bad taste to speak ill of the dead. I didn't even know where half of it was coming from, because she said that my parents had apparently always looked down on her and made her feel inferior just because she didn't come from a wealthy family and didn't belong to the same class of people that they did. I mean, I had literally no idea what she was referring to because as far as I was concerned, my parents had always been perfect as to her and my parents were not the kind of people who judge others on the basis of wealth. They were not like that, which is why I had not been raised to feel the same way. And I knew that for a fact, anyone who knew my parents would vouch for it. It was just all of that combined, her insulting my parents and calling me selfish for things that I was not even supposed to feel bad about, that led me to make the decision that I would not contact her unless she reached out to me first. The fight that we had was really personal, so I hadn't told anybody about it. Including my brother, even though we are really close. And I think that's where I made a mistake because a couple of days ago, apparently, my brother couldn't reach me on my phone because I was in a meeting and he had something really important to tell me. He didn't know about the fact that my wife and I were fighting. So he called Mindy instead and told her what he wanted to talk to me about. I had told my brother to do a little research and find out how much the property would be worth if I actually did plan on selling it. He had a couple of friends who worked in real estate and he spoke to them and found out the amount that I had. The estimate was actually just only half of what the property was worth. Apparently, the kind of architecture that the house had was hot right now and buyers would be lining up. One of his realtor friends had even claimed that he could set up a deal between me and a guy that he knew who was looking for houses and turn them into really classy and expensive Airbnbs. I thought that was a great idea because that way, I would still have some degree of control over my property while still making money off of it. And it honestly seems like a better idea than just selling it. Unfortunately, my brother had already told all of this to Mindy because he had assumed that we were on good terms and she would want to know about this since it was great news. It was only after I was done with the meeting that I called my brother back and he told me the same thing. I agreed instantly, but then he told me that Mindy had also said that she was happy about it. So when I asked him what he meant by that, he told me that he had spoken to Mindy about it before he told me because I hadn't been answering calls and this was just too important not to share. So he had called Mindy first when he wasn't able to reach out to me. I was a little worried when I heard that and then I told my brother about the fight that we had a couple of days ago and the fact that she had moved out and was living with her parents. So her saying that this was a good idea Wasn't exactly great for me, but nevertheless, I was still willing to get the deal done with his realtor friend. I would just think about the Mindy mess later. Now that she knew what my plans were, I had no idea what she was going to do next. I was kind of hoping that she would apologize to Tommy at some point, and it did happen, but for all the wrong reasons. And now I don't even know how to feel about any of this. Because Mindy reached me that day itself, in the evening, and said that she wanted to speak to me. She sounded really morose, and I really thought that she was going to apologize for all the horrible things that she had said to me during the fight. Not just to me, but also to my parents. I was really expecting her to say that she was sorry about everything and that she had been out of line. Instead, she started off by saying that she had heard about my plans from my brother and she wanted to make things right with me. She said that she wanted to come home and have a discussion about everything that had happened. I was taken aback when she didn't immediately apologize. I know it sounds very entitled, but I really felt like she owed me one. So I even asked her if she didn't have anything else to add and if she wasn't going to apologize to me for what she said. To that, she replied that she didn't really feel sorry because she thought that was way overdue. She claimed that everything that she had said the other day had been out of anger, but she had been feeling that way for a long time. Apparently, she felt like she had never really been a part of my family, even though she had been married to me for 3 years, simply because of the place that she came from. She said that it might have been something within herself, an inferiority complex of sorts, but whatever the case was, our behavior around her didn't help either because we were constantly just showing off how wealthy we were and how different she was from us. I thought that was a really stupid thing to say because we had never been that way. I can tell you guys for sure that she was completely making all that up and it was all in her own head because we are not the kind of people who show off about our wealth. Besides, what would I even gain from rubbing my wealth into my wife's face, of all people? So that was a lot of rubbish and I told her that to her face. I was getting really annoyed by her constantly claiming that she was a victim here. My parents had been nothing but lovely to her ever since we got married and the fact that she was making up things to make them look like bad people was getting on my nerves. So I told her that I didn't want to speak to her anymore unless she could acknowledge that she screwed up. She told me that she wasn't going to do that, and in the heat of the moment, I told her that if she didn't feel sorry about the things that she said then I had nothing more to talk to her about and there was no point in having another discussion. I said that I would be filing for divorce so she had better prepare herself with a lawyer. And then I hung up on her. I suppose that's what really scared her because ever since I said that I would be filing a divorce, she has been calling me relentlessly and trying to get me to forgive her. She keeps saying that I'm making a way bigger deal of this than I need to and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. But even now, she hasn't apologized to me yet. She has been begging me to take her back and just give her a chance to explain everything, but I don't think I owe that to her, not until she apologizes to me for the horrible things that she said about my family. Considering the fact that my parents are gone now, I really think it was disgusting of her to try and possibly blame them for her own nasty behavior. I also spoke to my brother about this and he feels the same way. He thinks that I should hold out on speaking to her, at least until she can acknowledge that she made a mistake. She has been texting me non-stop, but I haven't been replying to any of her messages because I don't really have anything to say to her. I mean, what do you even say to a person who simply refuses to acknowledge that what they did was horrible and wrong? She is pretty insistent that if we just meet one time and talk things through in person, I'll be able to see her side of things and maybe then I'll forgive her and work through this. But I don't have any intention of meeting with her in person until she can accept that she screwed up. I think she's being really immature about this and I honestly feel really exhausted because of how frustrating everything is. Last night, she texted me again and I made it very clear to her that I was not interested in speaking to her or meeting her until she apologized and that was my final decision. I also gave her an ultimatum and told her that if she didn't make up her mind about what she wanted to do about this within 3 days, then I would be left with no other option but to file divorce because I couldn't go on this way. I loved her, I really do, but I can't let her disrespect me and my family over and over again and let her get away with it all the time. I can understand that she has never liked my parents and maybe it's some internal issues that she needs to work out on her own, but that doesn't give her an excuse to speak ill of them. She said that I was being really unfair and that it was very selfish of me to behave this way, just because I had a massive inheritance to look forward to now. She told me that I was putting wealth over her and our marriage, and that just didn't seem okay with her. I don't understand what she was hinting at, but I didn't like the implication that I was prioritizing money over my marriage because that's not the kind of person that I am, and even right now, it's inside of everything that she has said. I'm still trying to make things work and giving her an opportunity to make things right with me, because I really want this marriage to work. But it seems to me like she's the one who doesn't care if it works or not, she only wants things to function her way. Even when she's not in the position to make calls like that, I feel suffocated right now and I really don't know where to go with this. I have tried speaking to my brother and he thinks that I should file for divorce because this is getting way out of hand. And I guess I should, but just for my own peace of mind, I want to get a second opinion because I don't want to make a mistake. This is a really big deal for me because I take my relationships very seriously, and this is a marriage breaking up that we are talking about. I really want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and I don't want to have any regrets in the future about what I did. So Ida for wanting to get a divorce after my wife insisted that I sell my childhood home so we could quit our jobs and go on a 6-month long vacation instead. Update 1. Hi, It's been 2 weeks since I posted here, and a couple of days ago, I finally filed for divorce. I met my wife last week, after a lot of insistence from her end. She just wouldn't stop texting me, and I honestly just wanted to get this over with as soon as possible. To be honest, by the time I made that post here, I had already moved on from her in my head. I didn't want to stay married anymore, and I just came here to make sure that I wasn't making mistakes. Because I didn't want to regret this in the future, and after reading most of the comments here, I realized that I was doing the right thing, so I went ahead with whatever I felt was the right thing to do. Anyway, when I did meet my wife in person, we decided to have lunch together in a restaurant instead of eating at home because I wanted this to be impersonal, and if we were outside, she wouldn't be able to make a scene, so that was another reason. It was awkward to see her after so long, and I wanted to leave, but I had already made a commitment and I had to sit through it all. I wish I could say that she said something new or that we were able to work things out, but of course, we were not, and that's why I'm getting a divorce. She told me the same things again and said that even if our parents hadn't exactly treated her badly, she just felt like they didn't respect her because she didn't come from a rich family like us. It was quite exasperating because at this point, even she knew that this was all in her head, and she was just making things up to have a reason to hit my parents, so I told her that she needed to stop that. But she told me that she couldn't just turn it off because that's how her brain functions, and I need to understand that. And while I do understand and respect the fact that she has issues and she's aware of it, I can't constantly let her walk all over me and allow it to happen. Just because she has issues. She told me that she had felt that I was being selfish by not putting her above a stupid house that my parents left me, and it almost felt like I was telling her that she was not worth it. So I told her, once and for all, that it was an unfair and stupid comparison, and that I was sick of her constantly trying to make me look like the bad guy just for basic things like not wanting to sell the house that my parents had left me and that I had grown up in. Or not wanting to quit my job because I was actually happy with my work. I felt like she was constantly projecting, and I had put up with it for a long time, but I couldn't do it anymore. I told her that I had been thinking about it for a while and that I was going to file for divorce now because I didn't want to be with her anymore. She seemed a little shocked when I said that, but, thankfully, she didn't create a scene or whatever. She told me that she respected it, and even though she wouldn't have preferred for things to end this way, there was no other option now because things were too far gone for us to consider reconciliation. And well, that's how it ended. We haven't spoken since then, and she has blocked me everywhere, but I think I should have seen that coming. Anyway, I have filed for divorce, and in a couple of months, it will come through. I'm not too worried about the inheritance and stuff like that because we did have a prenup, so it's about to be a relatively easy process, but it's still going to be emotionally exhausting, and I'm just mentally preparing myself for it. Update 2. So today I found out that Mindy will not be contesting the divorce, and I've got to say, I don't know how that makes me feel. I guess I'm relieved that this is coming to an end now. I'm also low-key upset that my marriage is ending, and I don't know the fact that she's not going to be contesting. It really makes me feel like this is happening. It's weird and really sad, but this is what I had wanted and it was finally happening, so I have to just make my peace with it and move on with my life. I have already started packing away things that I don't need, that she and I brought together because I don't want any reminders of her around the house. The divorce is going to be difficult as it is. I don't need to make it even more tough for me. My friends and my brother are all there for me, and I'm really very grateful for it. They're the ones helping me get through this. Update 3. Hi. So really quick update here. My divorce with Mindy came through a couple of weeks ago. It was a relatively straightforward process, and the only difficult part of it was actually saying goodbye to her for one last time. I'm assuming that it was just as difficult for her as it was for me, but even if she was hurt, she didn't let it show at any point. Things are going to be different now, and I'm trying to accept it.